Hello everyone, Alex here of Forever Classic Games, LLC. Really excited to start using our actual proper business title. Of course, things are very different now from the last time you heard from us as far as from between, say, the later half of 2021 into 2022. So we've got a new website version running. We've upgraded to the new Squarespace. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was actually go into the archives of Forever Classic podcasts that maybe didn't get released for whatever reason. Of course, I personally have moved from Dallas, Texas to the Minneapolis area of Minnesota in the last year, so my life is certainly different now. But these are some of the interviews I caught in between my travels, because I also moved from Alaska in the middle of there, so I wanted to sit down and kind of like go through these archives and figure out what is still relevant and what might still be interesting. So this particular interview is about Weaving Tides with our guest Sebastian. And Weaving Tides you can pick up on Steam or Nintendo Switch. It's a really cool little top-down adventure game with a really interesting mechanic involved with textiles and weaving and such. And there's a lot of really just like interesting puzzles and things. And I played the demo a while back for I think a digital PAX event or something. And life gets in the way, and I just didn't get around to covering it or reviewing it or posting this particular interview. So I'm happy to share with you guys this interview with Sebastian. And I do want to openly thank Sebastian for taking the time to showing us the demo and speaking with us, and really appreciate everything that they were doing. And if you do enjoy this particular interview, maybe check out that game. It is available, and it's playable, and it's there. And of course, if you do want more interviews and various reviews and written content, that all is still tied to foreverclassicgames.com. That's not changed. The website format is just a little different, and we're actually scheduling regular podcast episodes. So I'm considering these lost episodes of the podcast. They'll be kind of labeled as such. I'll try to get the recording date in the description about as accurate as I can. But either way, I do appreciate all of our listeners and all of our audience. We're on a pretty interesting journey, and right now, probably more than ever, we would really love the support of our fans. So if you like what we do, make sure you follow us on Twitter at ForeverXClassic. Check out our Instagram pages and all that. All that's linked on the website. And if you really enjoy our work on the website, or a video or a podcast or something, share it with a friend is really all we ask. And we're looking forward to doing a lot more in 2022. Maybe getting the opportunity to travel, but with COVID being a thing, obviously that's going to take precedence in our decision making. So I've still got a lot of interesting things for day work in the fire, but I'm excited to finally kind of take that freelancey, scrappy sort of mindset into helping Zach run Forever Classic Games LLC. So enough rambling. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoy this interview. Welcome to the Forever Classic Podcast. I'm Alex McCumbers, and we're here at it again with another interview with some developers. We've got a game titled Weaving Tides that is a top-down adventure game, so similar to, say, like a Zelda or maybe even Bastion. But the twist is everything is based on weaving and thread and textures and textiles, and it's a really interesting art style. So I have with me here Sebastian. So Sebastian, please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Sebastian. I'm the technical artist and co-founder of Follow the Feathers, and we are a small game studio based in Austria, Vienna, and we are currently working on Weaving Tides.
So I guess my first question then is, how did this design come to be?
Actually, that's a question we get quite frequently, because it's such a unique concept, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the story behind it is that our creative director, Verena, one time when she went on a stroll in the woods, she saw a remarkable bark on a tree. And she's a very creative person, and she thought, oh, that bark looks like it's made up of cloth. And that's where the basic idea of the game originated.
Wow. See, I kind of assumed that maybe somebody had like a hobby in either cross-stitching or something.
Oh, she has the past in that direction.
Okay.
So she actually attended the fashion design school. So she's the one that knows about how these things work in real life, and we are the ones that make it happen inside the game.
And it works extremely well. I was just playing the demo recently, and the way... So for anybody that either doesn't get a chance to watch the trailer or anything, you basically fly on the back of like a dragon almost, and you weave under and below the environment to make these stitches. And
yeah,
there's
exactly.
all these little puzzles and monsters to fight, and you gotta like stitch them down to defeat them. And it's really creative, and it seems like you guys stick to this theme and explore it in just about every way you can think of. And I always think that type of game design is really fascinating.
Yeah, that's true. That's also our mantra. So we also really like the Zelda series and especially Nintendo games that revolve around one game mechanic, one core mechanic. And we also try to do that with Weaving Tides. So everything revolves around stitching.
I did think of Nintendo as playing, and especially in the Paper Mario series and like Kirby's Epic Yarn. And so it's interesting that you cite Nintendo. So I guess what other influences really affected Weaving Tides, whether it's games or anything outside of games?
On the game side, I would say definitely super giant games. So for example, Journey or Bastion.
Oh, okay. That's interesting because that perspective is very similar to Bastion.
Oh, and by the way, Journey isn't a super giant game, I just realized.
Oh, yeah, good point. That's
Yeah.
that's Santa Monica, I think.
Yeah. But super giant games like Transistor, Pyre, and Bastion, so we really like their art style and their approach to how they design their games.
Mhm.
So we had a close look at their games. And of course, as you already said, Nintendo with the Zelda series and the smaller games like, for example, Pikmin. So we really like the idea of one main mechanic.
And recently we had the Wholesome Games Direct, and that's something that we've been exploring at the very... Because, I mean, we play a lot of, like, action games, and so, you know, some of the games are very traditional shooters or, you know, what have you. But here recently, we've been doing a lot of interviews with people about games that are much more laid back, more relaxed. What are your thoughts about the idea of a game being more relaxing and not necessarily having that, like, that traditional games energy, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think recently there were a whole lot of games that try to go to that niche. And for us, it's also the kind of games that we want to create. So when we were studying together, we had the feeling that there are already a lot of action-oriented games out there. And we wanted to have something that you can just play after a stressful day and have a cozy or more relaxing experience.
And that's not to say that the game is not lacking in action. I mean, you're constantly, like, trying to figure out ways to weave enemies together, and you're exploring the environment. So it's not to say it's like a walking simulator or a game that doesn't keep the player engaged. It's still a very engaging game, despite the more relaxed tone.
Yeah, I think it's all dependent on the pacing. And for example, if you have a look at the Zelda series, there are villages, there is a outside overworld, and there are boss battles. So I think it's a really good mix to look at. And we try to do the same thing. So we also have more relaxing experiences inside of the game, but of course also boss battles and puzzles.
And the puzzles are definitely pretty interesting, because I think I struggled with one for a little bit, but I finally got it. But speaking of relaxing, I think one of the things that really ties Weaving Tides together, that's funny that, is the music. I think that the music is absolutely excellent, even in this early stage.
Well, thanks a lot. I will tell that to our audio artists.
Yeah, so how did the concept of just the soundtrack and the themes of that kind of come together? Because it's a lot of guitar work.
Yeah, so the two audio guys that we have on our team, we studied together with them, so we know them for quite some time, and they also made the music for our last project. And there it was also more kind of a peaceful and relaxing experience inside a forest, and we really liked the work he did there. And so for this project, he was part of the team quite early, you could say. So quite early in the project development, we already told him about our concept art, about our vision for the game. So he had a lot of time to see the audio concept.
For context, what was your previous project?
Our previous project is called Niva, and you can play and download it for free on itch.io.
How do you spell that?
Niva.
Yeah, how do you spell it?
I'll type it in the chat.
Oh, that'll work. Oh, okay, gotcha. Niva for anybody that wants to look that up. And you say that's on itch.io.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
And actually, it was our last university project that we did together. So at our university, you can choose your own projects that you want to create. And we did a game project before. So this is our second game project from university. And it really went well. And that was also the starting point for our company and to work on Weaving Tides.
That's awesome. I know we talked to Dylan, who's a developer who made this game called Eldest, and he talked about how that game started as a university project. So it's fascinating to me how game developers and people that work in games are being educated these days. Because here in the States, the idea of going to a school for game design is definitely there, but it's not nearly as popular as widespread globally as one might expect.
Yeah, I would say it's the same thing in Austria and in South Germany because we are quite close to that location. Here it is quite special if you find a university that specializes on game development, for example. So the university that we attended is more broader. So you also have multimedia like audio, filmmaking, and 3D animation, of course, and programming.
Very cool. And one of the things I always like to talk to whenever we have people from different areas is culturally, what has gaming meant to your area throughout the years? Because we saw in Thailand, it's a completely different approach to gaming. And one of the things that one of the guys was telling us is that it's really hard for people to stick to one controller because everybody just kind of grabs what's available. So what was
Really?
gaming like in Austria? Or is like?
If I remember my childhood, I think it was quite niche and still not mainstream. And in the last years, I got the feeling that it's got much more mainstream. Of course, that's also because of the mobile gaming and everyone has a smartphone and that kind of stuff. But I also think that the big games and gaming in general is getting more visibility around here.
Awesome. And it seems like the more and more that we have games in the general populace globally, the more cultural influences we get, and that helps define various generations. Like we just saw the Indian-based game, Raji, I believe it's called, come out. And that was really cool because we don't see Indian-based fantasies very often.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm really looking forward for these kind of games because I think they also promise new experiences. I mean, there are a lot of stories that got explored by Hollywood or by the big companies, and especially indie companies have the ability to make more niche concepts and to realize that.
So what sort of cultural influences then are you bringing to Weaving Tides?
We are looking at cultures that use textiles for, like, for example, Turkey and India. And a lot of our in-game characters actually have names that originate from old weaving techniques or names of clothing, but Verena would be the better person to ask about that stuff.
The Turkey connection is definitely because the treasure chests that you find are the little like paper hexagon looking things, and I'm like, where have I seen this before? But that's it. It's a Turkish thing.
Yeah,
and I think that I saw it maybe in like one of the film adaptations of the Chronicles of Narnia or something. Whenever she gives them the Turkish delights, that's cool.
Yeah, and we attend a lot of events, and at one of the events there were also some Turkish people, and when they played our game they realized that some of the names are actually originated from Turkish, and they asked us about it if it's a coincidence, and we said no, it's on purpose.
That's super cool. So whenever I'm playing this particular game, like it's very, you go through certain areas and those areas are designed in a particular way that like players move through in various ways, but what is the scope of the world of Weaving Tides? Like, for example, we see the moths, but do we get to see other types of people as well?
I don't want to spoil too much, but basically the world is split up into different kind of layers. Okay. And you start at the top layer, and the top layer is is closest to the sun, so it's more like a desert, and the feeling is very hot and it's warm there, and you have a lot of plants and clothing that you would think of if you think about desert. And there are other layers as well.
Very cool. Now, one of the things that I didn't spend a whole lot of time with was the playground creative mode. Has anybody in the team been able to make like something particularly cool? And what do you hope to see players do with that mode in particular?
Yeah, so one of our developers spent a lot of time doing pixel artwork of The Legend of Zelda.
Oh, cool.
Which is quite awesome. It took him a lot of time, but I think it looks really special. And we are always looking forward to what our community creates because they have really surprised us with some of their creations.
What's been one of the most surprising designs?
What we didn't expect was that one person went ahead and really stitched every possible stitch that you could make in the playground. And the playground is really big, and we never tested that because we are not sure if the performance is yet ready to handle such an amount of ribbons, but it worked out quite well.
Wow, well, at least now you know.
Yeah, now we know.
That's cool, because for anybody that gets a hold of this later, it's a big space.
Yeah.
Speaking of modes, I know there's a lot that, we can't reveal because things are still being developed, but are there any additional modes planned aside from Adventure and Playground, like, say, a New Game Plus or something?
We are thinking about something like that, but at the moment we are focusing on the adventure mode and the playgrounds mode, but we want to have replayability too. So if there is somebody out there like me who is more of a collector and explorer and really wants to beat the games 100%, there will be incentive to make a second playthrough.
That would be very cool. I know anytime that I play a lot of games, and some of my favorite games have been shorter experiences with a high amount of replay value. And I think some of the series that do this super well is like the Resident Evil series. So you like beat the game, you get some stuff, or if you beat the game super fast, you get like an infinite rocket launcher, and that's just silly and fun. And so I'm always fascinated by the ways devs can bring people back to their games over and over again.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things about weaving tides, if you think about the concept that you can stitch in the world, you're basically just making a line. So you make a start point and an end point. And by using that basic concept, you can put so many constraints and interesting twists on this mechanic. So we would have a lot of ideas that we can still twist and make it interesting once more.
I'm excited to see how far you take it, because I was like, okay, I understand what's going on, and then some little mechanic like pulling the threads down or something would come through, and I'd be like, oh, that's clever. And then the little thimble doors that you attach and then you pull and it activates like a door, and then you like staple down essentially.
Yeah,
that's so cool. Like,
so you can really look forward to the later puzzles. We also had some really cool moments when we designed them and iterated on them, and sometimes it just makes click. And one of our last puzzles, I like it very much.
One of our first-person devs that we had talked about really pursuing the idea of making players feel clever, and it feels like that Weaving Tides definitely has those sort of elements. So I think people will really enjoy it. I'm excited. Well, I guess one of the last things that I like to do is I'm just always kind of interested in what people are also interested in. So what sort of things have you been like playing or reading or watching, and is there anything that you want to like recommend to anybody, or what's really been interesting you?
So I think what's a good fit for this kind of podcast is favorite games.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite games is actually World of Warcraft.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I played it when it was released, and it was actually the reason why I learned 3D and got into game development. So I'm not sure if you know, but there is like a very niche community inside of World of Warcraft that is just about exploring. So they try to find the boundaries of the world and to break them and to access areas that are not yet intended by the developers to reach.
Yeah, that seems about right. I find myself more of an explorer type player in those sort of games as well. Everybody's like, oh, let's go do the raids. I'm like, I don't care about no raids. I want to see the dragon. So
yeah, exactly.
Are you still playing then?
I don't know. But I think a few months ago or something like that, they re-released a version of Classic. They are played for a little while, but I think it's all about the community. And the community for me is not there anymore. So it was just like a little bit of nostalgia.
Yeah, there's so many different communities going on in games, and even outside of games, like whether it's a book club or a jazz night or whatever. And so I always find it really cool how people have been able to get together based on very specific interests. Like, for example, our community is really focused on games that are retro inspired, is what I call them. So anything that's like you can trace back to the Super Nintendo or the NES or whatever. And so we have a lot of people based on that, and then a lot of people that are interested in like indie devs and the idea of game design and what we can learn from game developers. Because I'd always, when I'm doing research on, say, something much older, say a literature project or something, I'm like, man, how cool would it be to sit down with these authors and talk to them? And then it got to the idea of, well, I'm super fascinated with games. Most of these developers are still around, and even some of the like most influential games we have, those men and women are still here. For some of those projects, we need to talk to them quick because they might not be here much longer. But that's why I ended up doing these sort of podcast interviews, because I want to add to the value of games. I think that games are really important. And so I think that telling those stories and seeing where things come from and the people behind them really adds to the overall gaming experience. And so I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Sebastian, are there any closing thoughts you want to leave with our audience?
I really liked what you said about why you are doing this podcast and the reason behind it. And I think it's really important to talk about also the older games and about how games influence us as a culture and also as people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think games can help to learn many real life skills. So, for example, learn coding or learn how to create levels. It's all about the skills that you learn in life, and games can help you to discover them.
I'm convinced that world peace will come by Pokemon. It's one of the most like widely accepted things, and like when you're playing those games, you get Pokemon from all sorts of regions, and then Pokemon Go came out, and it's just like it's a game that breaks down barriers, and so I think that the games in particular can really connect people in a way that some things struggle with. So,
yeah, Pokemon Go was a crazy phenomenon.
It was for that first month, I tell you that. I've never seen so many people in a public place. And now that's great that it didn't come out recently because, of course, everybody's in quarantine.
Yeah, that's true. But it's interesting that it's the same for you in Texas because it was the same for us here in the smaller villages too. You saw people playing that you would never have expected that they play on their phone, but they were outside and they were hunting. It was amazing.
Yeah, we had moms, we had elderly
people
that didn't know what a Pikachu was. Like, it was really fascinating. It was one of the most just genuinely happy times, I think, in games that I've ever seen. I mean, we had guys, and I used to work in television, and so we would be at the TV station really, really late at night, and we were all production staff, so we were just watching, make sure things were running. And so whenever we'd have a down moment, we'd go hunt Pokemon, like run around downtown or go to the parking lots and go for a jog and catch some Pokemon on the way. And those guys, like, never really felt like much of a gaming... Like, that just wasn't something they were interested in. They were into sports and that sort of thing. But when Pokemon came out, they were all about Pokemon to the point where they had better captures than I did. And I was supposed to be the nerdy one of the group. It was fun. Well, Sebastian, if somebody wanted to check out Weaving Tides or find you guys on Twitter or something, what's the best place that we can send people?
So we are most active on Twitter and on our Discord. So I would recommend to go there, and you can find the links on weavingtides.com.
Very cool. And of course, I do hear a lot that wishlisting the game on Steam is really helpful for indie devs. So if anybody's on Steam, go check that out and add it to the wish list if you feel so inclined. And that'll do it for today's episode of the podcast. Of course, we're doing lots of different interviews with developers. We had PAX Online, we had Gamescom, the game developer, the Game Devs of Color Expo is happening. TGS is happening. There's always something going on, and it seems like September was absolutely slammed. And so we've got a bunch of interviews coming, so I definitely appreciate people listening to the show. And if you do want to interact with us any further, it's foreverclassicgames.com. Send us an email or find me on Twitter at acmccumbers. But again, Sebastian, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And for everybody at home, stay cool and stay safe. We'll see you when we see you.